Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening wherever you may be. I've got a really special guest on, Helen Russo. Helen, you always leave such good comments. Like, I really appreciate it when I'm live streaming or I have somebody on, or even like on post, like not live videos like this one. You're always leaving thoughtful comments, but especially on the lives, you're very engaging. It's clear that you're passionate about this, and you're a fellow Arizona native. So welcome, Helen. Thank you so
No,
much.
not a native.
San Diego first, then Phoenix, no?
Well, San Francisco, as
Ah,
evidenced by my giant who
you're a Giants fan.
stink this
Okay.
year,
Okay.
and then San Diego, and then Phoenix.
So what, Phoenix for what? Like the last, what, how many years?
20, little over 20.
I mean, it's basically a native. Considering Phoenix is like a bunch of Californians that just moved in recently. Like you're a native. You've seen the growth. That
Yeah,
city's grown. I went to U of A 20 years ago. I graduated in Tucson, and I would drive through Phoenix all the time. And now, obviously, living in Yuma, I drive through Phoenix a lot too. And man, if I would have just picked any place on the outskirts to invest, it would have done well. I don't know so much about the
Queen
middle.
Creek,
Queen Creek, so you're out north northeast?
southeast of
Southeast.
Phoenix.
So you're on the way to like Casa Grande and stuff.
I'm way Casa Grande. I'm
Okay.
about 15 miles from the 10.
Okay. What do you think about sites in Casa Grande? Just like off topic, because I keep thinking about that
I think it's a
city.
growing area. I think it would be a great place to open a site. I
Me
think it would
too.
be a great place to get some Native American clinics going in research.
Yeah, you're right next to Eloy and you're kind of on the way to Tucson. I if
You're
I
right
were to
on
pick
the res.
if I were to pick a new place to do research, other than Yuma or the surroundings, I would go, I think Casa Grande.
Yeah,
Anyways, free
and
advice for anyone watching. Where
even
else?
a little east of us. We Queen Creek, wow, it has grown so much in the last 20 years. It's frightening.
Hmm.
When I first moved here, I was still traveling as a CRA. And when I drive to the airport, if I saw three cars from my house to the 10 or my house to the 60, that was a busy morning. It now takes me 20 minutes just to get to the first major intersection, which
Wow.
is about three-quarters of a mile from my house.
I feel like Yuma has grown as well, just slower, obviously, but my
Yeah,
in-laws who come visit from Phoenix, they're each time they come, they're like, "Wow, this is like the first time I actually experienced traffic here," and it's growing as well. I think Arizona's like a boom state.
yeah. I kind of wish it wouldn't. I used to have a 360-degree view from my house. I could
Helen,
see
me too.
fireworks
As we speak,
everywhere.
Helen, as we speak, we've lived in this house for 3 years, just about like a month shy. This lot next door has been like not built on. Now all of a sudden they started building, so my view is gonna be gone pretty soon. But
Yep,
Guru Nation, this is riveting information, okay? But
but not related.
everything's related, Helen. Listen,
True.
we need to talk about your career. You're a consultant. You've been doing a lot of medical writing recently. You get into safety narratives, protocols, informed consents, quality control. You are super experienced with monitoring, GCP, project management. You follow the industry. I know based on your comments, you follow the industry, follow the trends. How did you get started in research?
Actually, I was a study subject in an NIH study way, way back when. It was really pretty hard to find clinical trials, unless you happen to know a doc who was doing them. I saw a program. I guess it's now Discovery Health. I don't remember what it was way back then. Pertained to a condition that I had and listened to the doctor that was speaking. So got on the phone the next day and scheduled an appointment with him. Worked with the study coordinator quite closely. She and I are still friends 30 odd years later and thought, wow, I can do this. I had just recently graduated with my bachelor's degree and needed something that paid more than hospital admitting clerk did. So I got into study coordinating and got to know a monitor and thought, I could do this and got hired for the pivotal Aricept study.
You did the Aricept study? Uh, this was for Alzheimer's, no?
Yes.
I think I worked on that. Was this around '07?
I don't think it was quite that late.
Okay, okay. Oh,
Closer
so you
to
worked on like the early
03,
stuff.
I worked on
Okay.
the actual pivotal trial.
Yeah, okay. I work on the late
They had
state,
just
like
finished
the
their
phase
phase two.
4. Okay, okay. Wow. Isai. Wasn't that Isai or Isai, however you pronounce it?
ASI, yeah.
Asai.
Yep,
Wow, Helen. All right. All right. We got some connection. That was I remember that study. I don't think it was the same study, but the same like programs basically.
right.
One of my first like top like first 5 trials that I did was that one. I want to say if I had to guess number 4 study I did, and those become very memorable to me. I got my start in central nervous system research as well. So,
That's,
uh,
yeah, that's where my area is. I was a speech pathology major, all but my thesis for a master's in speech and hearing science. So neurology was cognitive communication disorders was my has always been my first love. So speech, or I'm sorry, Alzheimer's, head trauma, stroke. Unfortunately, if you specialize that much, you don't work much.
right. So after that, you met a monitor while you were coordinating. This is such a
Hmm.
underrated, maybe not underrated, but under-discussed thing, interaction that really benefits the CRC. I mean, yeah, it benefits the CRA because if they establish good rapport with the CRC and all that stuff, they get better compliance and in turn it makes them look better. But for the coordinator, do you know how many coordinators default to this is my monitor. I'm gonna say as little as possible and hopefully they leave soon. Like that's the wrong attitude, especially if you're ambitious and want to move on beyond the site level. You need to
Absolutely.
get to know your monitors really well.
Get to know your monitors and do the absolute best possible job to make their lives easier. Make sure your reg docs are in order and filed. Make sure your data queries are resolved before they ever even get to the site. You know, those were the days when everything was done on paper. So it was a little bit longer process to do data queries. But, I mean, I had some sites that would have fantastic coordinators and horrible site directors, and they
Ah,
would be 3 to 6 months behind in their query resolution because all those directors did was push to enroll. Well, yeah, enrollment is important, but you can't just enroll patients. You got to do the paperwork.
the
And
quality.
if a sponsor says get your data entered in 48 hours of a visit, you you really got to do that.
Helen, I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Yesterday, I was talking to a VC firm. They're looking to invest in a company, not mine, but they wanted my thoughts on a bunch of stuff. And with this topic came up, the one you just brought up, what's most important for sites for the owner? And I said, well, you want the truth or do you want like the textbook answer? And he said, well, yeah, the truth, of course. I said, listen, we all know quality is important. And there's like you said, Helen, there's a range of tolerance for site directors and I guess a range of like realism where obviously quality is important, but to some it's not important. important, like you said. And I fear that maybe it's like as high as 50% of the sites just push enrollment at the expense of quality, which this is why it's a problem, Helen. The industry incentivizes this behavior because as long as you're not extremely non-compliant, meaning like the FDA is going to shut you down, sponsors will tolerate late data entry, deviations, as long as they're not like too many safety ones, but they'll tolerate a bunch of things as long as you can enroll. And
Yep.
show me where a famous investor once said, show me where the incentives are and I'll show you the behavior. And that's really the issue is I've talked to many CRAs like you that have gone to complain to their higher ups. Hey, this site, I understand that they're an important PI for you. I understand they're enrolling, but look, they can't operate this way. And they just get shut down, pushed aside. What is your thoughts on this? And have you had similar experiences?
Yeah. And most of the time it's in the larger SMOs. This one, if I were to mention its name, you would know the SMO immediately.
Are they still around?
I actually believe they are. I'm not sure because I'm not as involved directly with sites any longer.
Fair enough.
But we'll leave it at Arizona and you can fill in the rest. And they were
But
over on the west side.
but SMOs, like there was a bubble around, gosh,
The late 90s
there you
where they
go.
were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Do you see any similarities between that bubble and this new site network bubble, like large site networks? Or do you think, I mean, hopefully this time around quality's not compromised. I suspect we'll have like slightly other problems, but
Um,
what do you think?
I don't know because like I said, I don't work with directly with sites as much anymore. I equate the SMOs of the 90s and early 2000s to research mills. That's all they were. They would enroll, they were high enrollers. It was totally hit or miss if the quality was there. I see now more of what's happening is sites are getting more compartmentalized, at least when I was still monitoring when my daughter was little, like monitors are. We're getting pigeonholed. A monitor no longer does everything from pre-study to closeout. You have teams that go out and do SQVs. You have teams that only do closeout visits. So the sites don't have as much opportunity to really develop a relationship with a monitor. And I see that as lacking. I think that's really an important part that's missing from clinical research. And
Yeah.
even within the site, now you have the study coordinator, but the study coordinator doesn't see the patient necessarily. She doesn't do the data entry, or I just enrolled my daughter in a study for migraine headaches. The only thing the study coordinator did was take note, and she actually did the EKG. And there was some weird thing where the hospital wanted to do an EKG as well, and we ended up just blowing that off because the hospital never got the order for it. But she
Oh,
didn't draw the labs. We went to the lab. We spent more time walking than we did anything else because
yeah.
it's a major medical center study. So I think that the compartmentalization and pigeonholing of duties is not necessarily a good thing. It allows sites to do more studies, but how does that affect the quality and the rapport with the study subjects and the sponsor?
Yes.
Does that make
I
sense?
No, 100% makes sense. I used to monitor at a large AMC. I had a monitoring stint for like 4 years, like in the middle of COVID, pre and post COVID. Large academic medical center, actually in the city you're very familiar with. Your shirt is from there. Everything was compartmentalized, and until that point, I've only dealt with small sites. Like I've owned small sites my entire life or my entire career. And when I did monitor, I monitored similar structured sites, right? Where the coordinator is pretty much doing everything. And that's the way we're structured at UMA Clinical Trials. That was eye-opening to me because that is like one of the most prestigious universities, one of the biggest research universities that exist, and nobody had accountability for anything. It was like when I needed an answer as a monitor, I would ask this person, the coordinator. Oh, that wasn't me. That was another coordinator. They're not here anymore. And it wasn't even them. It was a assistant who's not on the delegation log. And yeah, basically we don't have an answer. So this happened like just repeatedly over and over and over again. You don't have anyone being accountable, yet the data is churning when it eventually gets entered. It's churning. And patients are being serviced. And I guess the PIs were good because they were like key opinion leaders. But I looked at that as an outsider to academia and I thought, this can't be, they can't be in this business for the same reasons that I'm in this business as a site owner. Like we're all about patient customer, we call them customer service. These are about getting grants and about publishing papers and about
Yeah.
getting their staff, as cheap as you can and they're all gonna eventually leave. So let's just use them while they're here. Almost free labor It inspired me to do better as a site owner myself. And I do think there is an advantage to working with small sites. I think the site networks, because I am involved and I know a lot of these site networks. I don't think it's the same quality issue as the SMOs. And I don't think they're becoming like the AMCs, but I don't think it's perfect either. I think the less responsibilities you give to one coordinator, the bigger the chance of problems happening and accountability being dispersed into a black hole where basically you can't really blame anyone for something going wrong. Whereas with a
Well,
one coordinator,
as a
you
monitor
got a
doing
coordinator.
quality visits at pre-study visits, I would not approve a site if the study coordinator had more than 3 to 4 active enrolling studies, because there's no way one study coordinator can effectively coordinate 4 studies.
Mhm.
I don't care how many people you have working with you, you just can't do it. You're overworking and you're not going to have a quality there. Most of the time I got overridden, but that was my subjective opinion
So you would put in your
was no.
report, like coordinator
Yep.
seems to be overworked, short on resources, and they
They're
would get.
not planning to hire anybody.
Were these the AMCs as well, or was this like a smaller site?
No, these were the larger ones, mostly, the clinical trials of
Mm,
I can't
America.
remember. Yeah.
I remember dealing with
Um,
one of them, Clinical Trials of America. I don't know what happened to them.
they're still around, I think. They made
Wow.
Radiant Researches.
Oh, I remember
Um,
them. Yeah, they were like one of the first big SMOs.
mhm, yeah. Or the one that I was working with on the west side was ACT, but I think they were part of Clinical Trials of America
Hmm.
at some point, or because I had worked with them on several studies, and they were actually a very good site
Yeah.
until this one former Air Force officer became their site director, and then it was awful. I went to the PI. The PI looks at me and says, I can't do anything about it. And it's like, you have to be able to do anything about it. It's your name on that 1572, not his. And
Mm,
I actually, that's probably one of the only times I went over a site's head to a regional director. And
mm,
I'm pretty sure he ended up getting fired because of that. They were four
yeah.
months behind. I couldn't tear down CRAs.
I remember those days. The So far these site networks are behaving well. I think there's a lot. They're still in consolidation mode. I mean, we're kind of exploring UMA clinical trials, to see what kind of site network might be appropriate for us to join. Um, Multiples are so high right now that you'd kind of be foolish not to explore the alternative. So far, I'm not seeing the quality issues yet. Like I've actually interviewed employees of large site networks, and they seem to have their ducks in a row. Like the coordinators, it's very structured, very disciplined, it seems like. And the coordinators, for the most part that I've talked to, are happy, which is always indicative of good management, if nothing else. Now, if that continues, I don't know. Who knows? Because with more consolidation, you're opening up a can of worms, literally. But I don't think that I think we learned our lesson from the SMOs, but I do suspect there would be other issues that we are not foreseeing yet.
I hope so. I keep thinking we've learned our lesson with CROs, but
That's a whole another story. Do you want to get into that? Because you've worked for CROs, you work with CROs as a consultant.
yeah,
I have an
I've worked
article
for
coming
several
out
of the
soon.
major ones.
I have an article coming out soon on my LinkedIn newsletter, Investigators Brochure, and I'm predicting the end of the CRO as we know it. There seem to be smart ones that are have seen this for years in advance, way before me, like IQVIA. They're the smart ones becoming tech vendors basically,
Hmm.
and site networks. What are your thoughts on the CRO, like the future of a CRO 10 years from now, 2034?
Oh,
What does it look like?
I don't know. Hopefully, I won't be around in 20 more years. Um,
10 years. Or let's just say
it's
2030, like 5 years from now.
I definitely see them going more electronic, which I don't necessarily agree will be a good thing. I think for monitors it will be because there will be less travel, and which is the main reason I left monitoring. I'm a single mom,
Hmm.
so I tried after my daughter was born to go back to monitoring, and I flat out told them the CRO has been absorbed by a larger one and I got laid off. I told them when they interviewed me that I required at least 2 weeks advance notice to go out of town trips so I
Right.
could make sure I could arrange for childcare. And they offered me the job anyway. I was getting calls at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon wanting me to be in Fresno, California at 7 a.m. Monday morning. And then having the lead or the line manager getting pissy with me because I said, no, I can't do it. Well, you're the only one that can. It's like you've got a team of 25 monitors, and you're telling me that I am the only one that can take basically a 5 hour trip. Nobody can get to Fresno in one flight.
Right. You gotta go to like
Yep.
LAX or Bakersfield or who knows where. Yeah.
It's actually easier from Phoenix than it was when I was in San Diego, but
Wow.
still,
Oh, yeah. I've made
yeah,
a few trips to to Bakersfield and then Fresno. When you said they were getting pissy with you, like at least as of late, prior to this recent layoffs, right? There's a lot of layoffs at the Sierra level. They were all touting themselves as, oh, we're parent friendly. We accommodate working moms. What did they tell you? I know this was what, like a decade ago or more?
yeah, my daughter will be 16 this year.
Congrats. Congrats.
Yeah,
Uh,
she just got her learner's permit.
hey, at least she's
Um,
one of the last few to actually learn how to drive. I think the next generation not even gonna know how to drive.
and she doesn't really want to.
Yeah,
Part
they
of her
don't even
does,
care.
part of her
They don't care.
doesn't. But
These
she
days,
she
kids rather
also
have a phone than a car.
she hears my potty mouth when we're driving because Phoenix drivers stink.
Yeah, they do. Uh,
Um,
Nothing like LA
yeah,
though.
so this was about 2010,
This was the
and
heyday of, this was like before social, what is the word I'm looking for? Peer pressure. Before people got vocal on LinkedIn, where there was really
yeah,
like
it
LinkedIn was
was.
around, but there was like no one was really posting. It was just to find jobs. So I feel like they could get away with this stuff more, and today they can't because they're like, hey, we gotta watch it. We got some people talking, but so for you, like you were just before like this vocalization of CRAs on LinkedIn, but they basically told you in not so many words, we don't care that you're a single mom and you only have 1 day notice, basically, like it's the next business day you've got to be there. Like, did you end up going or what happened?
Nope.
You didn't
No, I
go.
didn't end up going. There was just no way I could.
You stood your ground, and what happened?
I was included in the first round of layoffs when they were absorbed by it was Inventive at the time. So
Yeah, I
whatever
remember.
Inventive has now become.
INC, which has now become Cineos.
Yeah. Inventive actually was an amazing company.
I remember working
Then
with them, a bunch of psych
once they
stuff.
bought INC, it was like the PPD Pharmaco merger. They
Hmm.
took the worst parts of PPD and left the best parts of Pharmaco on the table. And that's
Yeah,
exactly what happened with this merger.
it became like a dehumanization of trials. Like,
Excellent way to put it.
yeah, I mean, I lived
Excellent.
through it
Like
too.
Zane says, we went to work for Pharmaco and left PPD.
But how long? So when you stood your ground, you didn't get like fired that day. It took a
No.
while, right? Like a few months or like a year.
Yeah.
I
It
see.
was, I'm trying to think how long I was actually with them. I don't even remember. It was less than 2 years. So
Helen's
it was
LinkedIn is underneath
probably,
for those that want to know. I'm just letting Guru Nation know your LinkedIn is underneath for those for the historians out
oh,
there that are curious. 2010,
um,
2011, I3
I
Research, I
think it
remember
was,
that one.
yeah, I think it was, I was there maybe just, let's see, she was born in 2008.
Wow.
I don't think I was there quite a year because I remember the first week I was there, we went back east for the meeting with the sponsor. It was a rescue study for a big sponsor that was about to lose first to market because they were 18 months behind on their pivotal trial. And that happened to be the week of my birthday. So I was only there maybe 11 months, 10, 11 months before I got laid off.
Yeah, that would make sense with the timelines with your LinkedIn profile. A couple other things I want to get into. So thank God you're on your own, freelancer. I mean, I think that's a goal for a lot of people is freedom. Like this is something that's very underrated for career people looking to earn income still is freedom. Like the ability to pick your own schedule, to say no. No one's calling you right now, Helen, and saying, "Hey, I need you tomorrow to be in this city." Like you've earned that freedom for yourself through your experience. But a lot of the that earning comes in the form of blood, sweat, and tears, your sacrifice and things like that. You work alongside CROs and sponsors now. How do you see them? Do you think they've changed at all since the days that you were at I3 and Inventive, or do you think a lot of the same elements are still there?
I think a lot of the same elements are there. When I first started way back when on that Aricept study, you had a project manager and she was your line manager and the project manager.
Mhm.
Then they got into this matrix management where there's a lot of chiefs and very few Indians, and you never really know who to go to for what. I think that needs to be done away with and go back to one central person responsible for X number of clinical trials and each team for those clinical trials. So there's a clear delineation of authority. You need a project manager, you need a medical monitor, and you need your team. You don't need 15 leads,
And they're still operating like
15.
this, you think, the big CROs?
Last I checked, they were. I see
Yeah.
lots of lead CRA positions open. I don't see too many line managers.
And all the PM stuff is
Probably,
being outsourced too, overseas. A lot of CTAs
yeah.
being done overseas, a lot of study startup overseas. I know as a site owner, I deal with budget and startup people. A lot of times that they're overseas.
Yep. Well, and that needs to stop too, because, everybody cries about cost containment, but they also cry about wanting the massive amounts of unemployment we have had in fairly recent years. Now it's not so bad, at least according to the numbers, but I think those numbers are deceptive.
I agree. I think I'm releasing an article on my LinkedIn newsletter this Saturday. So for those watching in the future, you'll see this before it goes up. It's the evolution of the CRO, and it's we're watching it happen right before our eyes. It's the new normal. I mean, we're leaving the industrial age, headed into the information age. Companies need to adapt. I think CROs will change to the point where they are unrecognizable by 2034, and site networks with a layer, like a simple monitoring layer, are will become the new CRO. So that's just my opinion.
Hmm.
I could be wrong. Who know? Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think we've come a long way. I mean, when I first started monitoring, laptops weighed 10 pounds.
Now you could do it from a tablet almost. No
Pretty
one does,
much.
but you could pretty soon. I think you could.
I
Interesting.
could. I have a keyboard on my iPad, and I have full Microsoft capabilities on it.
Yeah. Let's last topic because we definitely need to have you back again. You're an awesome guest. It's rare to get
Thank
someone
you.
with this much experience. That's why I said when you kept commenting, I'm like, we gotta get Helen on. How did we never not have a podcast? Your master, something I bash a lot, and I don't bash it like to you or like to anyone. I don't think it's a dumb idea to get a master's in clinical research, but you're someone who actually did get one. But
Hmm.
you got it, unlike everyone else who tries to get it because they don't have experience and they think it's going to help them land the job. You got it like almost recently, and like after you've already
Hmm.
established a lot of experience. That's a different situation. Looking back now, was it worth it to get that master's in clinical research? And what was that experience like?
Yes, it was worth it. I wanted to stop monitoring, and medical writing, regulatory writing has always been something I've been interested in
Mm.
after reading hundreds of protocols and doing with some of them. I knew I could do a better job. So when my daughter started school, I went ahead and applied to Arizona State's clinical research master's program. It's actually can be clinical research with an emphasis in regulatory affairs. And I am proud to say that I've just been accepted into their first graduating class of doctoral candidates
Wow.
in regulatory science
You'll be
and
Dr.
clinical
Russo soon.
research.
Dr. Russo, how soon can we call you that? 2 years?
Ah, yes, I want that. It's in Arizona State. They're all online. Their master's program is definitely geared more toward sites as opposed to the sponsor side of things, but you still learn a lot. The instructors are fantastic. I keep in touch with a number of the instructors
Wow.
still,
Still.
and
Are they full-time faculty or are they just freelancing?
no, well, some of them are, some of them aren't. One
Hmm.
of them is actually, I guess, a site director now here
Wow.
locally, and she's the one that was doing the approvals for the doctoral program. And one other
You
was a
got a shout
project man.
out?
Oh, hold on,
We'll
let
get
me
Guru Nation to
double
go
check so
follow
I don't
her.
get her name wrong.
Yeah, and while you're looking, let me preface this or sidebar here. I'm not against getting a master's in clinical research. I'm not against getting education. I am against going into massive debt to think that this degree will help you get a job when you don't have any experience in research. That's what I'm against.
No, no.
Just want to
It
clear the
won't. It
record
won't help
there.
you get a job. If you're just walking in off the street, it will help you get out of monitoring because that's what happened to me was one of my
There you go,
classmates
monitors.
was a medical writer, and medical writing is very difficult to get into when you're on the road 85% because there's a certain amount of extra education that you need to get at joining the American Medical Writers Association, and taking their online courses. And way back when I started wanting to do this, the only way you could be certified was to go to their annual conference for a week and a half.
I see.
And who has time to do that when you're on the road 85%?
But if
Um,
you're someone like in Helen's situation back 2015, 2012, and you want to get out of monitoring and you've been monitoring, let's say 5 years, and before that you have 5 more years of experience doing research, I think, yeah, that would make sense to get a master's in research or a PhD in research. But when you just got out of college and you can't find a job at a site and you think, okay, well, let me get a master's in research, maybe that'll help me become a CRA. That's not going to help you become a CRA.
No, your best bet on that would be to do some seminars through ACRP, DIA, and work at a site first. Very rarely does somebody get into monitoring without having been at a site? I think I got lucky and got into research totally by accident, which is how a lot of people do,
Yeah.
because they needed people with Alzheimer's background. And because of my degree in speech pathology and adult communication disorders, I had the academic knowledge that they needed. Being a CRA is not hard. I could probably teach a monkey to be a monitor, but you have to be meticulous. You have to have the attention to detail. You have to be willing to stand up to a physician and say, this subject does not qualify for this study. And that's where a lot of people lose it as a monitor, is they're not picking up the fact that you have blood pressures that at every single visit are 125 over 80. That just doesn't happen. Yeah,
125
once
over
you've got the
80 every
experience,
time.
I've seen it.
I've
I've
seen
seen
it too.
patients
That's why
whose
I'm
weight
laughing.
never changed.
I've
And
seen patients who
I've
have
seen
got
this,
taller from in like 2 weeks' time, like
yeah.
significantly taller.
Well, and I mean, I've seen this at major academic research centers.
Me too. That's actually the majority of the time where I see it.
Well, when you have, and I give a little bit of leeway at at an academic medical center, because I was at Stanford for a site. They had a medical student, a first year resident, a chief resident, and an attending all take a medical history on some of
Mm.
their subjects. And I had to read through all of those. And it was like, okay, well, which one of these is actually the most accurate?
Were they all consistent or were they like all over the place?
No, not always.
That's a problem.
It is, because now your source data is completely muddled.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully
Anyway,
they're not
Barb
contradicting
Marusiak,
each other. Who is it? Let's give
yeah,
the shout out.
Barb, Barb Marusiak, and
Barbara.
the Marusiak,
Ah, I see
and
her.
then
Barbara Marusiak. Shout out to you for
and
being
then
an
Barbara
excellent,
Frankowski.
and Barbara Frankowski, the two Barbara squared.
Yep. And then
Okay.
a lot of others. There was only
Yeah.
one or two that were kind of, we had an ex-FDA auditor teaching one of the classes. I can't quite
Was it
remember
Patrick
her
Stone?
name.
Oh, it was a,
No, it was a
yeah.
woman.
Well, shout out to Patrick
And
Stone. I
she
love
was
that guy.
great. So yeah, there were a lot that were really good. Some may not be there anymore, but the program is good. It is generally, I felt, more site oriented as industry oriented. We'll see what their
PhD.
DPP program is
When do you start that?
next August.
Maybe when you're like a few months in, we do a part two just to see how it's going and what they're teaching
We'll
you. And
see. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in that personally. It's something I don't make fun of it, but people think I'm so anti-education, but I'm not. I'm anti-education in a certain situation where you're using it as a crutch because you're afraid to go get it real experience. Once you've got the real experience and you hit a roadblock, I'm all for it if it's the right program. And in your case, it looks like the ASE Masters, and we'll soon see PhD program is the right one. So thank you for this,
Yeah. I
Ellen.
mean, I love to learn. There's always a use for learning. I don't understand people who I have a friend who's a respiratory therapist. We go through this all the time. Why would you go to Loyola Marymount to be a respiratory therapist when you can go to a community college and do it in 2 years? And then if you want, bridge to a 4 year and save $150,000. That I don't understand.
It's because
But
it's the industrial way of thinking, industrial age, where degrees were scarce. Nowadays, it's not. Like there's diploma mills, there's prestigious schools too that you still get, into debt. But degrees
well, you
used to
would
be
cry if you knew how much my undergraduate degree cost.
cry like because it was so cheap.
I started out at UC San Diego. It was 200 plus
Wow.
bucks.
Wow. But they had
Same with
they
San
had
Diego State, but
yeah,
there's a semester.
forget about it now.
Oh
You know.
God, no. I cringe at what it's going to cost to send my kid to school.
I just read a stat, well, and who knows if it's still going to be valuable. I just read a stat recently that said something around like 1 in 20 people just 2 decades, no, 3 decades ago, so in the 80s and 90s, 1 in 20 people had a bachelor. Today, 1 in 4 have a bachelor's. And those are
Yeah.
correlated with student debts being astronomical. I mean, didn't Biden like cancel debt? This is insane. The banks got involved. Don't get me started, Helen. Don't get me started.
Oh
I'm gonna
no.
get
I'm
canceled.
in a I'm in a Facebook group on paying for college 101 or something, and I'm thinking, are you parents out of your mind?
Mm.
What are you thinking? They're doing tours of 30 different colleges for their kid. It's like,
Yo.
why?
And who know
I
like
applied to one.
that was back in the day. Look, I have at least 18 years till that's something I'm gonna consider, God willing. I'm thinking there might not even be a need. Like God willing, we'll be well off to where we could afford whatever they want to do, but I'm gonna have a talk with the kid like, hey, are you sure it's what you want to do? Why do you want to do it? I mean, I think the paradigm shift has already happened, and we're just still living in it as if it hasn't.
I
Two
think it
decades
depends on
from
the
now?
age of the parents.
Yeah,
I
no,
was
that's got a lot
older
to
when I
do.
had mine. I had intended to start that 520 when I
Hmm.
was still pregnant. That didn't happen, and life happened. So now we're going to have to depend on scholarships and loans, but she's going to have to be reasonable. I am not going all over the country letting her tour
Yeah,
colleges. I don't know how these people can afford to do even that.
I was just
And then
talking
they're
to a friend.
complaining about not getting loans. If you
Yeah,
can afford to tour 30 colleges, you can afford to pay for your kids'
the banks
tuition.
were in on it. It's borderline, not borderline, it is criminal and predatory.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on these medical assistant certification programs and CNA.
Oh, yeah. No,
They
I agree with
graduate
you.
with debt and then get a 13 in Yuma. It's like $14 an hour job. Are you kidding? Like
I agree.
Helen,
And it's 6 weeks. I could teach
yeah,
a medical
yeah.
assistant in 6 weeks.
We can go on forever. If you have a like older parent, myself, of a youngin, I was just talking to a friend about this. Get your kids playing with AI. Obviously supervised because you don't know what the AI is gonna show them, but get them learning how to use the prompts. You may not need, like, this is a powerful thing, and it's getting better every year. By the, like, 18 years, who knows what it's gonna do? And, like, only the few people are gonna know how to, like, properly prompt it, properly utilize it. That's gonna be a huge skill set that may replace the need for higher education. I don't know, but let us know your thoughts in the comments. Helen, it was a pleasure. Good luck with the PhD program. I want you back when you start that. Like once you get like maybe a quarter in, if you want, please come back,
Sure.
share with Guru Nation your experiences. Everybody go connect with Helen. Her LinkedIn is underneath the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Like, subscribe, comment, share. Go connect with Helen right now. Bye bye.